picking up where we left off, which is part 2 of our ongoing 4-part series, The Future-Proof Skills You Need. If you did not hear my introduction to this series, make sure you check the previous episode of this show right here so you can get the understanding of what these are, but they are exactly what they sound like. The skills that will not be rendered irrelevant or useless because of what changes in the future. You want to have as many of these as possible and learn how to weave them, connect them, and make them all work symbiotically together. Picking up on point number 4, contextual understanding. Contextual understanding means understanding that something, or means understanding something that could be seen as a black and white thing while looking at it in different contexts. For example, if somebody is speeding in a car and they don't come to a complete stop at a stop sign, then it will be reasonable that a police officer may pull that person over and that person will receive a citation. So some police officers, I've heard them call this a rolling stop. So if you do a rolling stop through a stop sign, you don't actually stop, but you kind of slow down but roll through the stop sign and keep going, then you might get a ticket for doing that. And it would make sense for the officer to do it because by the letter of the rule, it's not really a law that you're breaking, but a rule that you're breaking, you would get the citation. But if the police officer can then see that the person driving in the car in context has a 4-year-old child in the back seat who's bleeding to death because they cut themselves with a pair of scissors, well, the police officer might, instead of writing a citation, they may, instead of detaining the person, they may actually escort them to the hospital with their siren on to get everybody out the way. That's a form of contextual understanding. And contextual understanding matters because when you understand the context of why someone ran through a stop sign, it means a lot different than just saying black and white, hey, you ran through a stop sign, the rule is the rule. Most of the time, the rule is the rule, but when you add that context, does it change the situation? Of course it does. And this is something that computers may never develop the sensitivity and the human touch to do. Now, could a computer actually be programmed to understand this? Why'd you run the stop sign? Well, my kid's bleeding in the back seat, and somehow you can prove to the computer that you're actually telling the truth. Could a computer be trained to understand that? Yes. At the same time, when you're dealing with an emergency on that level of that magnitude, let's say as a parent, or if you are happen to be the 4-year-old in the backseat of the car who's bleeding out, well, do you really want to talk to a computer and explain that to a computer, or would you rather talk to a human who you know will understand exactly what you're saying, exactly how you're saying it, and the context in which you're saying it? Of course, most of us will probably choose talking to a human in that situation rather than talking to a computer, which we're willing to do when things are maybe more under control, for lack of a better term, and we're not in an emergency situation. Usually in emergencies, we'd rather talk to a human because we know a human will get it, what we're trying to do. Whereas talking to a computer, the computer may be a little bit, again, out of touch. And that pun fits perfectly because what we sometimes want and need is human touch. And human touch has contextual understanding. Humans understand the context in which people do things, whereas computers may not quite understand it yet. I do believe they can be trained to understand certain contexts, but again, it's a certain amount of humanity that goes into an exchange, a communication between people that I don't think a computer is ever going to have the ability to do. This is why the better you are at contextual understanding, and this is a soft skill. If you didn't hear my series on soft skills, there is one. And the less replaceable you will be when the future arrives, when you have this soft skill of being able to understand the context in which other people do the things that they do. And this entire series on soft skills starts in episode number 1772. It's a 6-part series. When you understand things in context and you can put things into context so that other people can understand them, you have a highly in demand soft skill that I believe is going to become even more in demand as the future becomes more automated and we're dealing more with computers. We're dealing with computers more than we're dealing with human beings. Why? Because there are human beings out there who will grow frustrated with communicating with a computer. How many of you have ever called up the bank or the credit card company or some business and you got their automated system, and the automated system doesn't quite get the context of the challenge that you have, and you get annoyed dealing with this automated system and you just want to get through to a person? How many of you have ever called some business that has an automated phone system, and immediately, as soon as you hear the automated phone system, you start yelling into the phone, speak to a representative, or pressing the 0 key in order to get through to a representative? And every question they ask you, well, we'll be glad to get you through to a representative, but before we do that, let me gather some information. Then you try to override that. You just keep overriding because you don't want to talk to a fucking computer. All right, how many of you have ever been in that situation? Great. Everybody. Understand something. Other people have been in that situation too. And you in the future, if you happen to be running a business, if you happen to be having a call center where people can reach out to your company, guess what? They don't always want to talk to a computer. Now, there are times where I am dealing with some online software or something like that, or some online based business or some businesses online wing their capability of you accessing them online, like the bank or a credit card company or some company that I bought something from, Amazon, for example. And I can deal with the automated system, and it is efficient and effective enough that it can solve my problem without me having to talk to a human, which sometimes is fine. Because sometimes I don't really feel like talking to a human because I don't want to exchange the pleasantries and like to explain everything. I want to just be able to click a couple buttons and get what I'm looking for. So there are times where it makes sense I can deal with the technology and never not deal with the human. There are other times, on the other hand, when things are a little bit more complex of a situation where I need to talk to a person because the computer is not going to understand. And human beings are complex creatures. And the more human beings that you have involved in a situation, the more different things you have going on, the more complex a circumstance can become. And this is the reason why you need to have this soft skill. It will be valuable, even more valuable in the future. Point number 5. We're talking here today about the future proof skills that you must develop. This is part 2 of our 4-part series. Number 5 is original thought. This thing, original thought, is going to become more scarce in the future, and thus it will be more valuable because scarcity makes value goes up as artificial intelligence continues to encroach on our lives. Now, why do I say this? Because artificial intelligence is very good at creating artificial thought. It actually does this. Our AI creates artificial thought. So if you were to go to Chat GPT, for example, or any other AI bot software and say, give me a 3-paragraph explanation of Martin Luther King Jr., and 30 different people went to Chat GPT and asked the exact same question, you would get 30 different answers. So they're all original, quote unquote, but they're all based on information that has already been pumped into the system, the Chat GPT system, by the people who developed the software, the engineers who developed it in the first place. So it's very good at creating this allegedly artificial thought, and it's not really created. It's just basically an amalgamation of what is already learned from stuff that was created by human beings. And the better you can come up with, the better you can come up with something original and new that comes out of your own head, that is not a form of something that the software creates. Again, the software's knowledge, quote unquote, is just an amalgamation of what already exists, or it'll go out there and it'll Google and search for the information that you ask for. This is one of the reasons why some people, including myself, have resorted to using a Chat GPT more often than I even use Google when I want to search for something. I'd rather just go to Chat GPT and ask the question and let it give me an answer. And it usually comes up with the answer more effectively than had I used Google, where I would have had to type in the question, then Google has to kind of interpret what I'm asking for, and then it gives me links and I got to go read through them. Chat GPT does all that for me. And I'm using GPT as an example here, but there are many AI bot systems that do the exact same thing. So the better you can come up with something original and new, the less replaceable you will be by a computer chip or by some software code, because you're coming up with actual, real, original thought, as opposed to what a lot of your peers may be engaging with, which is artificial thought, quote unquote thought, that is coming from a learning model that has simply just learned, quote unquote, everything that already exists, and it came up with its own version of it. So this skill is already highly valued today. This is not really a future proof skill. This is a present proof skill, because this one is highly valued right now, because many human beings do not think at all, let alone do they think critically, let alone do they think in any original or creative way. Most people's thoughts are simply a reflection of things that have already been fed to them by other people, people who they know, like, and trust, and whose word they believe in. So most people don't think at all. So if you are an actual thinker and you can express your thoughts in a way that other people can get what you're saying, that makes you really valuable today, and even more valuable in the future, as fewer and fewer people will be thinking, because you have apps like Chat GPT and AI bots, et cetera, that basically do the thinking, quote unquote, for you, to where you don't have to think anymore. And human beings respond to incentives. When you give human beings the incentive to not have to think for themselves, people will stop thinking for themselves. There was a time, some of you may remember, if you're over the age of 35, you remember that you would get in the car to go drive somewhere, and you would not have directions on a device held in your hand, and the directions automatically updated where you were and where you should go and which way you should turn. There was a time when you didn't have that luxury. You just had to know where you were going. You just had to drive. And there was a time, maybe a few years before the internet became the internet, before not even a few years, but let's say we started to have maps on our phones. Who knows what year that was? Let's just say that was 2010. Might have been before that or a little bit after that, but between the years 95 and 2010, during that 15-year range, some of you who were in these stages of adult in that time period, or you didn't even have to be an adult, you just had to have been in a car. You remember going to mapquest.com or Expedia or wherever you went, getting directions to where you were going, printing the directions out on pieces of paper, and then you would go drive with the directions in the passenger seat or your passenger holding the directions, and you two just talking about how far you had to go before it was time for the next move or the next turn, or when you get off on the exit of the highway. These were printed out directions, so you had to gauge how far you had gone. Nowadays, the phone tells you, okay, you got to go 5 miles before the next exit. Okay, now it's 4 miles. Now it's 3 miles. Now it's 1 mile. Now it's half a mile. All right, here's the turn. Now it does it for you. I'm telling you all that to tell you this. You don't have to think anymore. Back then, you had to think. When you had the directions sitting in your passenger seat and you were using MapQuest, you had to think, have I gone 200 miles yet where it's time to get off at exit 81? You had to gauge and you had to look at the signs and make sure. Nowadays, the phone tells you, hey, the turn is coming up in exactly half a mile. Now it's 0.4 miles. Now it's 0.3. Up, the turn is coming up, get in the right lane. It's reducing the amount of thinking that you need to do. And as these incentives continue to expand, people will respond by thinking less. So your opportunity is where, ladies and gentlemen? Episode 1025. The opportunity is in the opposites, doing the opposite of what most other people do. Most people are thinking less. Your job then is to think more. You create an opportunity by using the law of contrast, doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing. So as less and less people think, you come up with more thought, more original thought, and also your ability to communicate this thought so that other people understand it. This is a big opportunity for you because technology, as I just explained, is incentivizing, not only allowing, but incentivizing people to stop thinking. I was on a live stream this morning, and someone who was on, I don't know if it was Instagram or TikTok, but I'm live on like every platform that allows live streaming all at the same time with multiple devices. And somebody left a comment that said that they have a friend who is getting a master's degree right now, and that this friend gets all of their papers, every paper they have to submit for their classes, written by Chat GPT. I don't know if this person was joking or not, but I do believe that there are people out there getting advanced degrees, and their degrees are all based on using internet software to do the quote unquote thinking for them. And I don't know if that'll get you through the entire graduate program, but I do believe people are using that. And again, the opportunity becomes bigger for you as more and more people become mental slaves to the powers that be and stop using their own brains. Point number 6. Today's topic, once again, is the future-proof skills that you need. This is part 2 of our ongoing 4-part series. Number 6, artistic expression. This is a skill. Now, this is a tricky skill because technology will be able to create, actually not will be, is able to create new works of art at the click of a button and can create thousands of copies of anything, and it can come up with these things much faster than a human being can. So creative expression, I mean this in a way that would not rather put you in competition with a computer. Because if it's just coming up with a new drawing, again, you can type a prompt into one of 100 different software programs that exist today as of this recording that will go create a piece of art for you right now. But the ability to creatively, artistically express is bigger than just that. It's bigger than just coming up with a drawing or coming up with some random picture of a bear riding a tricycle, wearing a jacket on a hot summer day in the desert of Arizona. All right, the computer can come up with that faster than you can, but artistic expression is bigger than that. So that artistic expression, having the competition of technology, does not mean that a human's ability to artistically express becomes extinct or that it would not be valued. I would still rather hear, for example, my favorite musician make a new song rather than hearing some generic song created by an algorithm. Right? Because there are algorithms out there who can just make music of things that never even existed. There's some software out there that I could have it make a theme song for the Work on Your Game masterclass that just talks about me and talks me up like a rap song or an opera song, anything like that. I can have it do that. But if I told you that I got my theme song written and performed by Kendrick Lamar or Jay-Z or Drake, it would draw more attention than if I said, hey, I just have a new theme song that I made with AI. You might listen to both, but you'll listen to the AI one just to hear what an AI song sounds like. If I told you I got a theme song written by Jay-Z, you'll listen because Jay-Z did it. So that artistic expression still matters because an artist who can make a name for themselves, they matter. And you can't replace them with AI. When Vice President, as of this recording, Kamala Harris, had Beyonce come and speak at one of her campaign rallies, for which Beyonce reportedly paid $10 million for this appearance. Beyonce spoke for literally 4 minutes. I don't know if it was literally, let me not say literally, for about 4 minutes. She was paid $10 million. That means $2.5 million per minute. There's no AI software that could have gotten that paycheck from the Kamala Harris campaign, but Beyonce can get it because of her ability to express artistically. So it still does matter. So genuinely expressing yourself in an entertaining or captivating way will always cause human beings to gravitate towards you. And no software is ever going to have that ability. At least, I don't think in our lifetimes. I don't think in our lifetimes that software is going to have fans, where humans know that they're dealing with software and they have an affinity towards it the same way that humans these days have affinity towards actual people. Now, maybe 700 years from now, humans will be out there worshiping software code and worshiping apps, knowing that they are actually worshiping software code and apps. I don't mean being fooled into thinking that an AI human is a real person. I don't mean fooling people. I mean people actually knowing that it's an app and them worshiping it as if the way that people do with humans these days. Like, can you imagine some AI singer having the same fan base as Beyonce? That seems beyond us. I think it'll be after our lifetimes. If that does happen, it's not going to happen while you and I are still alive. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. So you bookmark this. If I end up being wrong, I will admit that I was wrong. Someone can show me. So human beings will always gravitate towards other humans who express themselves. And there's a certain connection that humans get through other humans that we cannot get through a computer. Even if we're using a computer, we use the computer to connect with other people. Right? We're not using the computer just to connect with the computer. No one's trying to connect with a computer. We're connecting with the people we can reach through the computer or the phone. And they're all forms of computers, just for the record. So if you have this ability, there will always be an opportunity for you. Your ability to express creatively, because people need that, and it's a form of entertainment. And human beings are much more inclined to move themselves towards entertainment than they are education. So this ability to express yourself artistically will always have value. Recapping today's class was part 2 of our ongoing 4-part series, the future-proof skills you need. Number 4, contextual understanding. That means putting things into context and understanding them with full context, not just the black and white of what happened. There's one thing to run a stop sign, another thing to run a stop sign because your 4-year-old child is bleeding in the back seat. The context changes the entire situation. Humans that have that ability, always valuable. Number 5, original thought. As more humans are incentivized to think less, the opportunity is in the opposite, which is thinking more. Most people don't think at all right now, and it's only going to get worse. So the more and better you can move yourself to think, the more opportunity you'll have for yourself. And number 6, artistic expression. So while there are software programs out there that can create their own art, their own music, their own books even, we still want to hear from a human. Why? Because there's a human connection between humans that cannot be replicated with a computer, at least not in our lifetimes. I don't think that'll happen. Maybe in future lifetimes, maybe our great-grandkids will have to deal with it. But I don't think you and I are going to see that happening while we're still alive. But again, technology moves so fast, I can be completely wrong on this. If I am, you can hold me accountable for it. That said, tomorrow we're going to get into part 3 of this ongoing series. Make sure you go to workonyourgameuniversity.com so you can secure your spot to be working with me directly as we take your game from where it is right now to where you want it to be in this upcoming year and for the future. Not just the year, but the future after that. Work on your game. Dre, all